Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out to Bear Nation for tuning in for another episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship, a podcast for the entrepreneur-minded, created by entrepreneurs, discussing the real stories that give you the tools to overcome challenges and stay true to your real self. As always, I want to give a shout out to our partners over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. We've teamed up with Fin to give back to the communities that we serve. For every episode, we will be donating $10 to the cause of choosing by our guest in the Fin platform. Enjoy today's episode. Hey y'all, how are we doing? And shout out to Bear Nation for tuning in. I am excited for today's episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship, a podcast for the entrepreneur-minded, created by entrepreneurs, discussing the real stories that give you the tools to overcome challenges and stay true to your real self. I first want to give a shout out to our partners over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. We've teamed up with Fin to give back to the communities we serve. For every episode, we will be donating $10 to the cause of choosing by our guest in the Fin platform. So I want to introduce our guest today. Say hello to Hakim Elakhrass, the CEO and founder of NannyML. Say hello, Hakim.
Hey, how you doing, Rob, and everyone else?
Good. Well, Bear Nation's excited to listen. So Hakim and his team have been working on building NannyML, which is a software company for monitoring AI in enterprise. An increasing number of decisions are being made by AI, decisions that are currently going totally unchecked. AI is deciding whether you can buy a house or what discounts you get. Understanding these decisions and how they impact business will unlock a whole new world of analytics. It will also make sure that we always trust our AI. Prior to NannyML, Hakim helped build Prophecy Labs, an AI consultancy that helped clients explore how they could use AI, where the value of AI is, and where the pain around AI is. So that's a lot. And, excited to have Hakim. He's a two-time founder, y'all. So Hakim, to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into this world of AI and why you're so excited about building the future of AI?
Yeah. So basically, it's funny. I didn't want to go into it wasn't my original path, right? So I was going to be a doctor, like every good immigrant parent. So my parents come from Egypt. They moved to the US. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Like every good immigrant parent, they wanted me to be a doctor. So I'm a bit far from that. I mean, maybe an AI doctor, doctor for the AI, but no, I'm just kidding. Sorry, that was a very bad joke. So I originally studied biology, actually, with a pre-med track, thinking I was going to med school. And then I didn't really want to go directly to med school. So I wanted to do something like in between. And I ended up doing a master's in bioinformatics because I thought hey, look, bioinformatics is probably the future of medicine anyway. As everything's getting more digital, there's lots of genetics getting involved, more personalized medicine. So I ended up doing a master's in bioinformatics, and I didn't really want to go into any more student loan debt. Yeah. So that's the funny part of the story. And I literally just Googled, what's the cheapest, highest ranked masters of bioinformatics in the world?
Of course you did.
That's literally what I Googled. And you end up getting to the KU Leuven, where I did my master's. It's ranked 29 in the world or something. And I paid 1,200 euros for my entire degree. And that's in Belgium. And so
that's crazy.
Yeah. I found it. I applied to it 2 weeks later. They're yeah, you're accepted. Come on over. I actually ended up getting a scholarship. And I went to do a master's in bioinformatics with saying look, I'm going to go for 2 years. I'm going to come back and go to med school.
I mean, I went to study in Italy. It was kind of the same thing. It was you applied and immediately got in. I was looking for masters in marketing, but it wasn't as cheap as that. But it was that same thing. It's we'll go in for 2 years and we'll see what happens. So I love that. I connect with that so well.
Yeah. And it's I actually ended up writing tons of posts on Reddit. And until this day, people contact me all the time. You'd be surprised about I think I brought over 10 Americans to come study in Belgium. People contact me all the time and ask for details and how you did it. And I did because, I actually got inspired by a Reddit post. The reason I even wanted to Google that is because I was scrolling Reddit and I found this entire post about grad school in Europe and why you should do it. Dude, and then I felt oh man, I should give back.
That's amazing, the power of the internet. And by the way, Reddit is like a rabbit hole that if you're not careful,
Yeah.
you can go way down.
Yeah. No, it's true. Anyway, yeah, back to the story. So yeah, so I went to this master's of bioinformatics, and actually, like we had like 8 or 9 like data science classes. So like, data science, it's like, data science. AI is more the hype thing. Data science is the real life, like what you call the, that field. And like, I was just hooked. I was like, yeah, nope, biology canceled. 7 years of studying biology, that's enough. Like medicine, all of that. Like the future
Gone.
is clearly data science. It's clearly gone. Like that's it. And then I started working as a data scientist. And then I very quickly learned about like that it's much more complicated than just data science. Like data science is just, or AI or whatever, is just like the end product.
Yeah.
But actually, there's a lot of piping, if you will, like a lot of data engineering. There's a lot of stuff that has to go to building these systems that can bring in the data, right? And so then I was like, cool, if I want to, and I always had an entrepreneurial mindset. Like I'm one of those hustlers. I've been working since I was 14. I actually had a company, like also I was importing beanbag chairs. I don't know if I ever told you that, but I like literally was importing beanbag chairs. Like that didn't go very well. That failed miserably, but I've always been kind of a hustler. And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I was like, look, if I want to build any kind of company around AI, I have to understand the data science. I have to understand the data engineering. And so I did that, both of those for a bit. I actually ended up getting fired because I was a very bad data engineer. Yeah, I was in the energy sector, and they were just like, yeah, no, you're bad. And I was like, yeah, I have ADHD. Programming 9 hours a day is not really good for me.
I feel you.
Yeah. So then I got fired. And at the same time, like actually Wojtek, one of my co-founders, he had been annoying me for the past 6 months to quit my job so that we can start Prophecy Labs. And I was like, well, I guess so. Nothing else I can do.
So this is such a millennial, non-linear career path story, and it's one that I resonate with. For those that have listened to my podcast and listened to a few episodes, at one point I went to school. I thought I was going to be Dom Draper, Mad Men, advertising. Ended up in recruitment. Went to Italy, got a master's of marketing, worked for a cool company. Came back, ended up going into recruitment again. And then I ended up getting fired at one point. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own business. Entrepreneur minded, like, let's go fucking do this thing.
Nice.
Let's just start it. So I feel with you on that. And so as you're kind of going through this, New Jersey to Belgium to working in this field and kind of all these changes, what were the things that made you feel like you're going down the right path when you found this world of data science and AI? What were some of the things that really just hooked you? And it's like, you know what? 7 years of biology, wanting to become a doctor. Now it's time to change paths. So what were those things that really just popped in your brain that made you want to take those steps away?
Man, that's a very good question, actually, because it's like, I actually looked at it from a bit of like an altruistic perspective, like in that, like, look, if you're a doctor, you can help one person, or you can help just the people you touch, like come in contact with. But if you build software, if you build AI, if you build a tool using AI to help diagnose a certain disease, you actually help millions of people. And so you take what you can do as an individual doctor and expand it out to like way more impact. And that's what really convinced me. Like, look, there's so many use cases for AI. There's so much that's still to come. It's going to be used in every aspect of business, eventually every aspect of our life. And like, like AI, like, yeah, the technology underlying it is going to change. I think it's just this general concept of using software to like automate things in a clever way and to take decisions in our lives and in business. And so like when I kind of got into that and I saw all of that, that was just like, for me, it's just about impact. Mm-hmm. And like, what can I do to have the biggest impact? Because I find that like super important.
I love that, right? Impact. It's a big word with a big meaning, but also thinking about what AI and machine learning, those different data can do. And so, looking at this space and having, hear these buzzwords, like AI is used as a buzzword all the time, data, ML. So let's take a step back, right? And not too technical. Let's talk a little about putting this into usage. Like, what is AI? What is ML? And how are we actually supposed to be looking at this from a software perspective, right? Like from a business sense, because I think so many of us out there hear companies like AI this, ML that, AI recruiting process. and it's really just a keyword search, and they're just buzzwording it. So would you mind educating us quickly on some of these terms so we can kind of give our listeners some context?
Oh man, that's a very loaded question. I don't know if I'm fully qualified to answer it, but like I'll take a stab at it. So basically, when I look at AI, you separate it into two kind of parts. So you have like AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, and that's kind of what like people think of when they think of AI. That's like Westworld, like a like robot or an AI that can do everything, right?
Yep.
And that's very far away, and like we're nowhere near that. And then the second part of so you have AGI, and then you have like artificial narrow intelligence or narrow AI, and that's like what people are talking about in the day to day, which is like an AI or an artificial intelligence that does one particular thing very, very well.
Okay.
And that's like, but like still, data scientists, they don't like using the word AI. It's like, it's been around for a while, and it does have like a computer science background. But necessarily, like, so basically, if you want to say, like, okay, you have AI, that's like the top level stuff. Like, just in general, any system that like can take automated decisions, you know. And then you have machine learning, which is like basically the process of building a model, or it's building software where you don't actually program the individual steps, but you show software something, and then it learns from that, and then it can do it. Okay. And that's like very high level. But so basically, that's kind of the difference between the two. So if like, for some people, machine learning, it's like a tool to do AI. It like really depends. That's why I say like I'm not really qualified to answer that question,
that's a good kind of a good breakdown, because I think it's really easy to think, oh, AI, machine. We hear buzzwords all the time, but we don't actually think about in what context. So I really love that you talk about your co-founder Wojtek. And so for those out there that don't know, Hakim and I met through, was it Belcham, right? Through a US readiness program that I led a couple sessions in. And so I've had a chance to get to know the NannyML team quite a bit over the last few months. So when he talks about one of his co-founders, Wojtek, there's three, Wojtek and William. So tell me, I love this story. Tell me how the three of you met to start Prophecy Labs back in the day.
Yeah, so we've known each other for 6 years. So it's been a while now. And basically what happened is, like I said, I did that Master's of Bioinformatics, and it was like, I had those 8 or 9 data science courses, but it was still really a bioinformatics master's, and everything was like geared towards bioinformatics. So I was like, look, I should probably do like a data science bootcamp. This was back in 2014. Please don't judge me. Bootcamps were still cool. So I did a data science bootcamp in Brussels. We were actually the first like class of the data science bootcamp. And that's where I met William actually, in this bootcamp. And William also, like, he has a background in business engineering, so he's not also, like, it was just him, the same thing that, like, he had one course in data mining and he fell in love. And so we met each other in this bootcamp back in 2014. And then basically at the end of the bootcamp, there was a hackathon. And so actually, Wojtek went to that hackathon. That's when I met Wojtek. That's when William met Wojtek. That's like when we kind of all came together for the first time. And Wojtek and William were on a team together. They ended up winning the hackathon. I lost. I was in a different team. Like, we don't talk about that. I mean, actually, we talk about that a lot.
All the time.
All the time. Yeah, it comes up in, like, every discussion that I do about our introduction. No, but and that's when we met, like, really 6 years ago, and we clicked really well. And then it was like, oh man, I always like, this is the part where it all gets fuzzy, I always say like, 6 months later I called Wojtek to go hang out, but it's really more like 3 or 4 years later I called Wojtek to go hang out. So no, I called Wojtek at some time after that. I think it was at 2017, 2018. And I said, hey man, you want to go get a drink? Like, just hang out. It was really random. It was really totally random. And he was like, yeah, sure. And then we kind of just started hanging out every week. Eventually leading to my firing, where he started, before that, he was annoying me to kind of start this consultancy. But you want to know something funny? Like, the consultancy, it was never really the end goal.
Yeah.
It was always, we always saw it as like, we always wanted to build a product company, right? So the consultancy was always like a way to understand how companies are using machine learning and where is the pain around AI and all that kind of stuff, so that we can eventually translate that into a product. And so we did that for like a year and a half. And where William comes into the story, basically, of course, we wanted him to join from the beginning, but him being like Belgian, didn't want to. And then we had to convince him like 10 months, William, you should probably join. And then finally we went and had lunch with him and like convinced him to join. Got him on board and he jumped in. We had a crazy roller coaster, like lowest lows, highest highs, and then we kind of started to realize that maybe monitoring AI was kind of the way to go, and that's when we started thinking seriously about NannyML.
Love that. So you built Prophecy Labs as a way to learn the space and how companies leveraged, start with the end goal of building a product company. I love that, right? Like let's think strategically, right? Think about a 5-6 year plan. Let's go build a business. Let's learn entrepreneurship in a way, and consulting, where we have, as a service, we have a little bit more flexibility to take on, grow, scale, make mistakes, learn what we need to learn in order to build a product company.
Yeah.
So I love that.
We always called it very well paid market research.
Right. I love that. Very well paid market research. So with this idea to build a product company, right? Having a successful services-based company into a product, why a product company? You talked about impact, but let's bring that piece back. Why was the product piece of it so important, and what impact are you hoping to drive with this product?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, but it does come back to impact, right? With services, it's like you can always have a big services business. I'm not saying that you can't. Like, look at McKinsey. I mean, like, who are we to say you can't have impact with services, right? And also, there's a bunch of AI service companies that are also huge. Look at C3 AI. I mean, okay, they have some software in the background. Or look at whatever. There's a few others that also getting pretty big, right? But at the end of the day, the most likely chance of building a large, scalable, impactful organization is to work on a product. Because you're solving the same pain or the same problem for hundreds and thousands of people, right? And when you're doing services, you're just much more limited in that. So basically, it just came down to impact. We wanted to build something that had a very large, lasting impact, and we just felt a product was the best way to do that. And why monitoring, or like what kind of impact are we trying to achieve with that? It's basically, it's a very interesting question. We're very, like you said, strategic, right? Like, we do have passion for monitoring and we have passion for what we're doing, but I would almost say that like our passion for entrepreneurship is more, which is kind of funny. You don't hear a lot of people saying that, but like, we really have a passion for entrepreneurship. We really have a passion for building business and having impact. And so monitoring just came from like, look, a lot of people are asking us what happens to our AI after it goes into production. And we kind of saw, in our first pitch deck, we had this like graph, and it was like AI today, AI tomorrow. And AI today was about research and development and like very little deployment and blah, blah, blah. And AI tomorrow was all about deployment, monitoring what happens in production. And this was only 10 months ago. And now we're 10 months later, and it's like, who's not doing monitoring? Apparently the whole world is doing monitoring. It's crazy.
Right. Well, I love that. And again, it comes back to impact and seeing trends. And, and you kind of mentioned this, the three of you all have this entrepreneurial mindset, right? There's being the entrepreneur, and there's entrepreneurial minded. And then what I love is, and what I think is, entrepreneurial minded means you want to continue to grow, scale, build, whether that's internally or externally, starting your own business, and you're curious, right? And you're going after, because you want to make an impact, right? And it's that mindset.
Yeah, I read a very interesting article about that recently, and it was like, there's two types of entrepreneurs. There's heroes and there's generals. And basically, when people think of entrepreneurs or founders, they think of heroes. And those are people that are super passionate about the problem, super passionate about the user. They will do anything to solve a specific problem, right? And then there's generals who kind of take a step back, look at an entire field, understand the whole field, and then plan a method of attack on how to build a very large organization within that field. And we are definitely generals. We are not heroes in that sense. But it was very funny because it was like, VCs like heroes, but they love generals.
Yeah,
because they're
absolutely.
like very rare, and it's like it's not the most common mindset actually.
Absolutely. And, I feel that at a very strategic level because I run a services based business, and as an entrepreneur, both my entrepreneurial endeavors. I worked as a sixth employee for a startup and kind of C-level in that, so I understand that. And that was a product base, but both of the companies that I founded were services based, and it's very much kind of that hero mentality. But I've seen so many. And I've seen this difference between hero and general, and I could definitely say y'all are general. And what's interesting about that being generals is that there's a little bit more thoughtfulness into scale, right? Because a lot of times we see a problem, we want to go fix it, and then we keep building it, and we forget to think about the bigger space. And so I love that. And you say VCs love that, right? So let's talk about it. NannyML is funded. You're at the seed stage. So talk to me about that fundraising process and how you went about taking this venture on, getting it funded with that general mindset.
Yeah. That's great. So basically, to be honest, what happened was we were working in our consultancy, right? And it's very hard to like leave a successful business, right? And to just say like, look, no more money. We don't want the money anymore. We don't need that, right? Mm-hmm. But so what we said is like, we're going to put together a deck. We're going to tell a very good story, and we're going to ask VCs to invest in us pre-seed with just three ambitious guys and a pitch deck. And if that happens, we stop consulting immediately. The next day, consultancy is gone, and we jump full on into NannyML. Mm-hmm. And so basically, we put together this deck. And that was also a whole process, right? Like I think we have like, if you look somewhere, I think we have like 99 versions or 100 versions, like everything is iterate. So one of our company values is basically, release shit and iterate. Because like, like we have a very funny dynamic. Like William's a perfectionist. Wojtek doesn't really have any perfectionist bones in his body. I'm somewhere in the middle on that. And it's like, but actually the only way to get to perfection is to release something really shitty and iterate on it until you get there, right? So we had like 100 versions of this deck. We basically started out, we said, okay, like we did some research, like we read lots of articles. We saw that like the average process is 6 months. And we really planned it as a process. Like it's not just randomly going knocking on people's doors, like saying, hey, give us money. It was really like you have a CRM, you contact people, it's really like a sales, it's like an outbound process. Yeah, and we weren't as strategic as we should have been. So like you see people, they make a list of like, 50 VCs that they want money from, and like they strategically put them in our like we weren't that strategic, but we did have a process, we did have a CRM, we did have like this like, path that we were going towards. Mm-hmm. And so we put together like version 0.0.01 of the deck, and we just started pitching angels. So we got very lucky in that like we have one of our good mentors is a co-founder and CTO of Calibra, which is like a Belgian unicorn, but I think Belgium's only unicorn. And like he was a big player in like all the decisions we took. And so he made some intros for us. And then also we found our way into like, oh man, this is a very funny story actually. Like one of our other company values is always ask. So that's just the concept in that like you always have to ask because you never know the answer. And Wojtek and William were at Web Summit, I think, in Portugal, and they met this like other Belgian startup called Cloudalize, a super eccentric founder. And somehow like they just met them randomly and started asking stuff. And then we were going to go with them to a conference in California, but then COVID happened. But basically I was telling the founder like, hey, look, we're going to go fundraising soon. And he's like, oh man, I have like 100 angels. I'm like, what do you mean you have 100 angels? Like he has 100 angels invested in his company. Like he has his own VC, and he just sent out 100 emails. Like, yeah, these are the guys from NannyML. Talk to them. And so, so we got really lucky with that. And so that's where we started before like the real VC world stuff.
So, there's a couple of lessons here, right? And I love the saying, good is better than perfect, right? So many entrepreneurs out there listen to this. So many times conditions have to be perfect to launch a business. Right? We say, oh, I got to have perfect. We got to do this. We got to do that. We can't launch the product yet. It's not perfect. What the fuck does perfect even mean? Get a good product out the door. Listen to your customers and iterate. And like example number one is what you're saying here. And I love that lesson so much because so many times it's the fear of if it's not perfect. Now, you can't just throw, You
can't get to perfect. You can't get to perfect with that. Perfect is that iteration. I mean, you'll never get to real perfect, but the only chance it's perfect is that iteration process.
Right.
Because us as founders, us as entrepreneurs, like you said, it's that curiosity. We don't know anything inherently, right? We just don't know what's good. We have to discover through our customer or through the people who we want to get money from, through whatever process, we have to discover through the process what is needed for that. Whether that's the best product, whether that's getting an investment, you have to tailor, like in the case of investment, you're just iterating on the message. You know what we did? So the process was, like I said, we got those 100 intros. That was amazing. And so that allowed me to just every single day have 2-3 investor calls. And we were very, very lucky that COVID hit, as bad as that sounds. And I know COVID was terrible for a lot of people. But what happened for us is before COVID, especially here in Europe, investors are old school. They want to see you in person. Imagine trying to meet 100 investors and you don't even know who's going to give you money, and how terrible that was. I was doing 3-4 calls a day. So it allowed me in like a 30-day period to just go through this deck. And basically at the end of every call, I just listened very carefully to the frequently asked questions. And every question I get, I would edit my deck until there was no more questions. Right. And then when there was no more questions, I knew the story was good enough. And then we started really going out for the VCs and running a process with VCs.
Yeah.
And then again, you still listen and see what are the frequently asked questions. VCs are a bit different than angels, and you tweak and you iterate and you change the visualizations and you move slides around and you tell the story differently every single time until nobody asks anymore, or until the questions are unique. You go to 10 meetings and everybody asks you random questions because everybody needs to ask questions, else they feel stupid or something. So they have to ask questions. But until the questions are basically random, then you know that you have a good story, you have a coherent deck, and you know what you're doing in a way.
Absolutely. And because when we think about these frequently asked questions, it's like every VC, every angel, they have these frequently asked questions that if you don't hit those, it's these are like the red flag questions. Not necessarily red flag questions, but they're the basic questions that if you can't get past those and tell that in your story, then you're never going to get to the depth. And when you can pitch a VC or an angel investor and you get those unique questions, that's when you know that you start having interest, right? That's when the mindset shifts from it being another company on the market to a company worth investing in. And I think that's such a unique piece, right? Because it goes back to this value of always ask. Always ask for feedback. Always ask. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to always ask.
Yeah.
Ask, hey, what are you struggling with? Hey, what can we do better? Hey, how can we serve you better? Hey, how can I help you? Right? Give before you get. When you start always asking, stuff starts coming back to you. We have to put our egos aside and not be afraid to ask for help or ask how they can impact us or we can impact them.
Yeah.
When you always
it's also
ask,
true. We also always ask for intros. To every investor, hey, do you know anyone else who would be interested in NannyML? Investing. And that also creates this huge snowball. It's funny, at some point I could trace back an investor meeting, 10 or 15 investors. This guy introduced me to this investor, to this investor, to this investor, to this investor, to this investor. It's so funny how far I could trace back some of our investor meetings. It was pretty mind-blowing.
Right? So, I want to hit on this one piece here about, the networks that you've built, right? So, originally from Jersey, went over to Belgium, deciding that you're wanting to stay, obviously. Not looking to leave anytime soon, I'm guessing. So tell me, how did, you met Wojtek and William through this hackathon doing this. Tell me about your network, right? You just talked about these investors and these people asking, how do the three of you go about building a global network, and how are you leveraging those networks to grow NannyML in Europe and globally?
That's a very good question. I don't know how much of it it's gone. It definitely is, right? Because we have that value, always ask. And we have another value, which I think you're going to like, is generate your own luck. And that's a bit also, that's related to always ask, but it's not exactly the same. And that's going to meetups, right? Yeah. How did I meet Stan? This is one of the most mind-blowing. I don't even know if Stan knows the story. So maybe if he listens to this podcast, he will hear it. But basically I was sitting in my bed in Antwerp, where I was living. And I was just there's a meetup today. I don't feel like going. And then I was just sitting there like, and this happens all the time, right? And then it was like, something in my head was just like, you know what? You better go to this meetup. Generate your own luck. You don't know what will come out of it. You better get out of bed, get your ass out of bed and get to that meetup. And that's what I did. And there I met someone who introduced me to someone who then ended up introducing me to Stan. And that was just like, it's just crazy. And like all of these things and all of like the network and almost everything we've done has been just, yeah, I showed up to this meetup, I talked to some people, and then I met them, right? And so it's like, you have always ask, but you also have generating your own luck. You have to, like, obviously there's some, like, luck is this thing, but like generating your own luck just means putting yourself over and over and over again in positions where you can get lucky. Exactly. And that's like the driving factor behind, and just like, again, and then they feed into each other, right? Because when did we get really close to Stan was, Wojtek and William were at Web Summit, the same place they met that, that quirky startup Cloudalize. And I saw that Stan was talking there. And I just like put them in a WhatsApp group. I'm like, hey, look, you're talking there. They're going there. Go have dinner. And then they went and had dinner. And that's when they got like, really got to know each other and stuff. Yeah. And so it's like generating your own luck, always asking. And also like when it comes to, in general, when it comes to network, like something I always say, or at least mentors, maybe this is not network in general, but mentors do play a part of it. Yeah. Is I really like this idea that you have like different classes of mentor, right? You have like the guy that's already made it. You have someone that's like, 5, 6, 7 years ahead, and you have someone that's like 2, 3 years ahead. Yeah. And this like gives you like this kind of, you get this idea. You can talk to a guy that already made it, but forgot all of the nitty gritty details of the past. Yeah. And so you can keep your eye on that North Star on where you're going. You can talk to someone in the middle that's like a bit more about the scaling issues and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then you can talk to someone like a year or two ahead of you that literally just dealt with all the problems that you're dealing with now and can like give you very quick answers. And so those mentors you kind of have to actively seek. And it's like, look, there's not that many people who are kind of like that. So. Yeah. Well, I think what's great, and like I could pull out like 15 different lessons, but I'll pull out 2 kind of quick ones. There's the old saying, right? Luck is where opportunity meets preparation, right? Luck is combustible. It happens sometimes. Sometimes you just get lucky, and that's okay. But usually you get lucky because you are consciously or unconsciously putting yourself in the right places. And this is consistently putting yourself in the right places to be successful, the right events, the right conversations, asking a lot of questions, being curious. You talk about your values, the 5 values of Rise Up is curious, be curious. Because when you're curious, you ask questions, be intentional. When you ask questions and learn, you want to build with intentionality, right? When you start building with intentionality, be authentic. You got to be real. And when you start building and being authentic, you need to have a great attitude, drive attitude, and put good energy in. When you do those 5 things, that's where good things happen, right? That's where luck happens, preparation, opportunity. So, being able to do those things, even when you don't want to, you put yourself in position to create your own luck. So I love that piece. And then the second big thing brought up is this thing around mentors and coaches, which, part of the reason that we work together is that we actually work together in a coach kind of relationship, right? You just mentioned the mentors. Talk really briefly about the value of mentors and coaches in your life and how they've helped scale NannyML. Yeah, that's awesome. So basically with the mentors, like it's really, they serve slightly different roles, but with mentors, it's really just having someone who's walked the walk before, right? Mm-hmm. Just like, look, I have this problem. Probably you encountered it before. How do I solve it? And it's like, and then, there's also different types of mentors. Like, it's very funny. Like, I have some mentors that never answer the question directly and give this like very cryptic answer, like a Yoda-like answer, very philosophical so that you figure it out yourself. Or there's people that are like, no, bro, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Do this instead, And they're both pretty valuable depending on the situation, right? Like sometimes you need that Yoda that just tells you like kind of this philosophical answer so you can find the path yourself. That's maybe for the more harder things. But then there can be something like that's more like, I don't know, administrative or whatever. It's like, no, that's the stupidest thing ever. Don't do that. And so that's kind of where the mentors come into play. Asking those hairy, sticky, hard questions that they've done before, they might have encountered, and they kind of help you out. And with coaches, the way it really helps us is just like, it's a big part of it is accountability. And like having someone that's like, as a founder, you can have this like tunnel vision, right? You're just like, you have these like, you're in your own thing and you need someone to kind of bounce ideas around that's like outside of kind of your world. And then also to hold you accountable so that you get stuff done, especially stuff that's important that you don't like necessally doing, or you're not naturally, like sales inclined to marketing doing. Yeah, like content. Sales and marketing and content and like, all those things. It's funny, but like, yeah, you need someone to help you. I mean, at least I need someone. I have mad ADHD, right? So I need someone to pick up the phone and say like, look, you said you were going to do this, and why are you not doing it? Like, you better fucking do it, or I'm going to kick your ass.
Right. I'll come over to Belgium right now. Well, actually, for those that don't know, I was saying, for those that don't know, Hakim actually spent like the last 6 months chilling on a beach in Spain. Portugal. Sorry, chilling on a beach in Portugal, living the life. But I love this thought process because one of those that I really look up to is David Meltzer. He's a speaker. He does a lot, and he talks about this coach-mentor relationship, and that a coach brings the best out of you, and a mentor gives you the best of themselves. And you need to be humble in finding both in your life, especially if you want to succeed, right? Coaches help bring the best out of you, and mentors give you the best of themselves. And through that, you learn so much, and that allows you to scale and elevate faster. So I love that, 100%. Putting that into kind of a key phrase. When I read that from David Meltzer, I was like, this makes so much sense, because I act as a coach, I work as a coach, but I also mentor a lot of people. And so like, I know the different energies that I put out for both relationships. And sometimes it's kind of both, and I have to put both hats on. And so I love that definition, and I love to see how NannyML has used that to help build. But it goes back to being a general, looking at who do I need in my team or in this piece. So I know we got a few minutes left, and I really want to get into this. So I ask every when that comes to my podcast, kind of these 5 questions. And I want to jump to one first, because I want to talk about this for a quick second. But when I ask you this question, what is your superpower?
Yeah, so I think for me personally, and also for NannyML as a company actually at this point, and that's like finding the right people. Mm-hmm. Finding the right people is definitely my like finding Wojtek. I mean, not finding like that was generating our own luck, but like, okay, me and Wojtek were together, and then saying like, look, we need to bring William into this, and just finding the right people to make sure that we can do things the right way, and like kind of strategizing around like, look, we need this type of person, and like, just finding the best people that you can get to work with.
So millennial founders hiring and building great teams. I know that you've been recruiting recently, brought a couple new people in your organization. You're recruiting for a chief of staff role. So if anybody out there is listening and there's a chief of staff interested, please apply to NannyML. But talk about how, let's quickly talk about how you've gone about your recruiting process and what things you've put in place, because, how many hours did you spend last month in recruiting?
In like the past 6 weeks, it was like 200 plus hours.
So tons of hours on recruiting. So tell the listeners here at Bear Nation a little bit about how you've kind of elevated your process. Yeah. And why this is your superpower.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like recruitment and sales and fundraising, and also marketing. They kind of all follow a similar structure in this weird way. I mean, they're not 100% the same, but like, there's a lot of similarities, and that's like these processes where you're kind of pushing people through a process or a funnel, right? Mm-hmm. And finding people to put through that process. And so basically, finding the right people, we kind of just said like, all right, like we put together a process, not so unlike our funding process, a very structured process. We try to be very clear in our communication. We try to find the right places to post the job ad. I'll give you just an example. The job ad itself, I think we probably spent like 40 hours on that. I don't know, like a crazy amount. Not like this specific job ad, but like our first job ad ever, where we like created all the separate components on it, iterating it, sending it to people, testing it out, like what's the right message. And like we've been told by multiple people that our job ads are the best job ads they've ever seen in their life. So it comes down like communicating well, putting it in the right place, and then running them through a clean, transparent process where it's fun for you, it's fun for them, you respect each other's time, and you find out what you need to know, and you give the information that they need to know to make their decision. Because a lot of people forget about that like I don't like saying that people work for us. it's more like we work with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that they also have to qualify us. And also when you're working with the best people, that becomes way more true, that if you're working with top 1% of talent, ain't nobody working for you. Like those people are not working for you. They're working with you. If they want another job, they go like this and they have another job. Right. They're working with you. They are absolutely not working for you. You're delusional if you think that they're working for you. And so, yeah, just running that process and trying to find the right people and posting it in the right places. And that was also an experimental thing. Like we just got a minimum viable job ad out and posted it in X amount of places. And then as people kept coming in, iterating the process, iterating on the questions we asked, iterating on the places we posted. And then we took all the data from our first process. And then the second process was so much better, because then we're like, all right, we're only posting it in like 6 places because that's where all the traffic came from. We collect all that data. And like, this is what the job ad is going to look like. This is what the process is. This is what questions we want to ask. And yeah, so that's kind of our recruitment thing, and it's yielded like we're hiring the best monitoring people. So we're an AI monitoring company, and we're hiring people that have built monitoring system at unicorns, and people from, I don't want to say not really competitors, but companies who definitely want to build monitoring themselves or are already building it, and like from these top 1% of companies all over the world, and we're able to attract those people at NannyML, and I'm really grateful for that people like that want to come work with us.
Yeah, and I love that because, and I've talked a lot about this in some of the other work that I've done. The way you even write the job description, right, is big, because you want to put that actual personality. Don't just copy and paste another job description from what you see in the market. Put some personality into it so that people read that and feel that, right? And then, you mentioned this, they're interviewing you just as much as you are about interviewing them. And throughout the whole process, it's the customer, it's the candidate experience first. Right? Yeah. Because what's one thing that you do to every person that ever applies in NannyML at the end of the recruitment process? What's one person you do, no matter you talked to them or didn't talk to them? What's the one thing you always send them? Yeah,
we always let them know where they stand in the process, whether they've been denied or not, even if they've only sent a CV or a resume. And that's apparently surprising for a lot of people, because in most companies, they don't actually I don't know of any company that rejects every single person with an actual email, not just ghosts them. I think ghosting them is more of the standard. And you would be so surprised how many people thank us. And our email is just our email is really just like, hey, look, we get hundreds of applications. We can't write any personalized feedback just on the CV level or the resume level. And we wish we could, and we don't have an automated system for that. But we just want to let you know that we're not moving forward with your application. And we make sure that everyone either knows that or they're moving forward in the process, obviously. And then if we've actually talked to someone, we take some time to give a bit of customized feedback.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I did an experience one time where I applied to 100 roles, and just to see kind of in a transitional state within the last year, looking at doing some side work and some different things. And so they weren't really full-time jobs, but they were different things. And of those 100 things that I kind of put myself out there for, I only got 10 rejection emails. Only 10 people, and they're obviously the standard, but 10 out of 100, right?
That's crazy.
It is crazy when you think about. I get that there's hundreds and hundreds of applications, right? But it's not that hard to put in even just an automated response to let them know.
Yeah, you can literally automate it. I mean, if you're having your recruitment structured in a tool that's made for it, like Workable or Breezy or whatever. Recently, we moved from Workable to Breezy. But it's so easy to just say yeah, look, when you move these people to these columns, you send an automatic email. So it's just the basic if you're organized in your recruitment backend.
Yeah, there's no excuse not to. So, a couple last questions here. I wanted to highlight that one because that's one I really, is really applicable to a lot of things. So as we close out, this conversation, which has been a lot of fun, a lot of takeaways that we've talked about, what advice would you give Gen Z or millennial entrepreneurs or anybody who is thinking about starting a business right now? What would be your advice to them?
It's a bit cliche. I mean, it's definitely cliche, but it's just do it. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And like I said, I'm just being cliche over here, but that is so true also with entrepreneurship. And I understand, look, like I said, I've been working since I was 14, and I wasn't always in the position to be an entrepreneur. I was paying all my own bills basically since I started working. I didn't like, I mean, obviously my parents, I lived with them, so I'm not trying to say like there's people that struggle way, way, way worse, obviously. But I always like bought my own car. I always paid my own gas. So it was that kind of thing. And you know, New Jersey's expensive as fuck. So like, you know, I've always like had to kind of, you know, pay for my own stuff and like, so I understand like, and I could have been entrepreneurial, like way more entrepreneurial, way earlier, right? Yeah. And so I understand that it's not so easy all the time, but I do think it's really just do it. Like just start. If you don't start today, you're going to regret it. And like, it's really one of those things that compounds. It like gets easier over time. It's a bit like investing or whatever. It's like your network grows, that supports you. And that's like, it's like the one thing we always say, like, look, NannyML is a startup. It's super high risk. It can fail like 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever. We might run out of money and then the story's over, right? But then it's like when you think about all the learnings and experience and the people we met, the story is really never over, right? It just starts over again on a different idea, a different product, a different company. And so and that's really compounding, right? Like you said, we had a company before and we had so many learnings that saved us. And that was like just us. And so we weren't using any of investors' money or anything like that. So we had so many learnings that we got from that we didn't mess up when like it was a bit more serious in the VC funded startup. And so we couldn't get those learnings if we just didn't do it, right? And so just do it, get out there, start whatever you're doing, because the experience that you'll get from it will really help you do whatever you want in your life.
Right. Whether that's a side hustle or going, you know, jumping 2 feet in, just start, because it's the only way you're going to get the experience to continue to grow and learn those lessons, because nothing will ever be perfect. Going back to that message that we shared earlier. Yeah,
release shit and iterate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing you launch out the gate is going to be perfect. So launch it, learn, build, grow, scale, be curious.
Yeah, exactly.
What's one? Yeah, go ahead.
No. I was going to say that's exactly what I would say. That's the perfect message.
Love it. So what's one book, resource, or show that you'd recommend right now to kick off that entrepreneurial journey that's really helped you?
Man, I'm really a cliche. Like if someone listens to this part, they'll be like, who is this guy? Like he's just, no, but really the book that I think helped me the most is Hard Thing About Hard Things. This is really a cliche. It's like one of those self-help founder books, but that book, like I've read it 4 times at this point, and every single time I read it, it was a new book. Literally every single time, because you experience the things that they talk about in that book, and then you read it again with the perspective that you got from experiencing it in your real life, and you're like, oh, that's what he meant. And then it's like all new book all over again.
Well, and then there's also times in there, and I've read it multiple times as well, there's times when there's things I didn't pick up on because I hadn't learned something before that when I read it, I didn't absorb it. And now it's like, oh, shit. Yeah. Now this piece helps me, right? It's the same way I feel about Tim Ferriss's Tools for Titans. I literally leave that on my desk, and sometimes when I just need like a quick break, I'll just flip it open randomly and read one of the 2-page stories to just kind of refresh. And every time I read it, as I go through different states with my business, that I just learn something. So I love The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Great book, and it's definitely one that every entrepreneur should read, or everyone who's thinking about being an entrepreneur, because it will really kickstart your business, in my opinion. So what's your lasting message that you want the listeners to take away?
Be stoic and build things that people want. Again, I'm really this cliche, man, but it's true. It's like, I really feel like, I just read a bunch of Paul Graham essays, and now it's just distilled, but like, no, be stoic, just because you can only control your own emotions. You can only control how you feel. And in business, that's like 10x. That investor you think is going to invest isn't going to invest. That client you think that's going to close isn't going to close. That employee you think is going to accept the contract isn't going to accept the deal. And that's just a reoccurring theme over and over and over again in entrepreneurship. And so you can't control what happens around you. And that's also, by the way, why thinking in processes is so important. And funding processes and sales processes, because a process removes that individual event from having an impact. It removes the power away from an individual event. The power is then in the process that you have hundreds of events, and then you're just much more likely to succeed, whether it's at funding, whether it's at sales, whether it's whatever. Process is so important because you remove the power away from an individual event. Until you kind of get there, you have to be stoic because you can't control it. You can only control how you react to it.
Yeah.
And so that's super important, I find, in business and in life in general, to be stoic because, you can't control everything and you shouldn't try to. And build things that people want, because in the end, that's like what entrepreneurship is about, right? Whether it's a service or a product, talk to your users, talk to people, understand their problems, and just try to help out, man.
Yeah. I love that, right? Attitude and effort. That's the two things you control daily. Attitude and effort. You give great attitude and you have a good effort. You give great effort and have a good attitude, great things happen. So I love that kind of, I'm cliche as well. Again, it's two of our values that rise up, so I get it. But man, Hakim, I know we could talk for hours and keep going down these holes, but I appreciate you for taking the time to be a part of the pod today. Where can the listeners find you if they want to learn more about NannyML, or for all my chief of staffs out there who want to apply to NannyML, how can they find you? How can they find the company? Where should they look?
Basically, I'm trying to tweet a bit more, but don't talk to me on Twitter because I have 3 tweets and they're terrible. But maybe you should. I don't know. No, LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. We post a lot over there. Our company jobs are open on LinkedIn, so I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I guess I'm a millennial. I'm not a Gen Z, so you won't find me anywhere else, basically. So LinkedIn is the best way.
Awesome. So we'll make sure to have both Hakim's and the company's LinkedIn linked into the show notes for everyone. You can also check them out. Just look up NannyML, nannyml.com if I'm not mistaken as well. And keep an eye out for what they're building and reach out to Hakim if you hear this and want to chat a little bit more, because he's got a wealth of knowledge, and his journey of nonlinear path into leaving the U.S. and going to Belgium and studying, and now staying in Belgium and growing a business, to leaving biology and being a doctor, to working in this field of data science and AI and ML, to starting one business just to start another, right? So many great lessons and key takeaways from this episode. So Hakim, thank you so much for being a part of this, and just appreciate you for sharing so much awesome knowledge with everybody.
Thanks a lot, Rob. I really appreciate being here, and thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And so thank you all to Bear Nation for listening in. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe. If you're on Apple, please go to the Apple, go to the App Store and rate it. Leave me a comment, put some feedback in there, help share this with as many people as possible. Follow on Spotify, all the other major platforms, and we'll see you all next time for the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship. Thank you all, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bear Nation, once again, thank you for listening to the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. And until next time, take care.